Nice. Allagash White. All right. Welcome in, everyone, to the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. Today's episode is episode 2, Hail Mary to the Hopking. We have our guests today on the show, John Rumney and Matt Katsoon is our commissioner, along with your host, the monotone master, currently in first place, John Burke, and our co-host, the smarter than his record suggests, Brian Tambo.
Pleasure.
How you guys doing? Nice to be here.
Yep. Happy to be on the show.
So, as you guys all know, the trade deadline has passed. The only hope to find a player is now on the waiver wire. It is week 11. We have 3 weeks till playoffs. How you guys feeling?
I feel great, honestly. I mean, I got to play Andrew this week, who can't even start a full roster. And then I go in to play Derek next week, whose team is in 10th place or 11th place. And then I go in to play Juan in the final week for a potential playoff matchup. And I feel good about winning all 3, so I'm in a good spot.
John, if we're honest, I'm crapping my pants right now. I have to play you next. I just made the worst trade probably in the league so far to date. I got 0 points. Like we were talking pre-show from AJ Green, and then traded for David Johnson, who immediately went on the IR right after trading him. So that was great. I play you this upcoming week, and that's just going to be a garbage fire. I play Messina, and then I get to play John. So the next 3 weeks are going to be looking tough. I'm not excited.
Yeah, John, I'm coming off of 2 straight losses. One to you, where I could have taken over first place, and then I lost to the last place, Jake, last week. Pretty demoralizing. But good news for me is I'm playing Nick Messina this upcoming week, who started Devontae Freeman last week, who, as we know, did not play. And then I'm playing against Matt Thal next week, whose team name is Team Doesn't Matter. Clearly, he cares about this team in the league. So, it's I would say pretty so-so at the moment.
All right, that leads us straight into our bad beats, and we all need to point and laugh at John because John just lost to Jake.
Man, yeah.
You lost to Jake 108 to 96. Really, the key dagger was when your quarterback, Kyler Murray, threw the Hail Mary to Jake's receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. How do you feel experiencing that play?
Well, first, it was purely amazement. I was like, wow, this is incredible. I love Kyler Murray, which I do. Always will. I have him in 3 of my leagues. But I did not realize until afterwards that Jake had DeAndre Hopkins, and then it was meted with instant demoralization. So
combined with the fact your tight end, Jimmy Crampaugh, also goosed you.
Well, Travis Kelce's on a bye. I mean, the tight end world is slim to none right now. So I took a flyer. Didn't work out.
Yeah. And you got to risk with Jimmy Grandpa. But as I'd like to point out, the next bad beat has already been mentioned by you. My opponent, Messina, left DeAndre Swift, 23 points, and Ronald Jones, 24 points, on his bench and played Devontae Freeman, who did not play in his lineup.
Inexcusable.
No.
That's just a terrible beat right there.
It's a real bad beat. It's a fantastic beat for me, though.
It was confirmed that he said that he didn't start them because he didn't check his lineup on Sunday. Therefore, Commissioner, take action.
Yeah.
Genius, man. Yeah, I mean, that was discussed previously this past week as we were watching the lineups Sunday morning and seeing that a few people in the league did not start their players. So I guess starting this week, warnings have been made. If you do not start your players, there will be monetary fines for this year. Next year, you're on the chopping block. You're going to get cut out of the league.
Hashtag fire the commissioner.
Also, realistically, in this match, if he switched out Devontae Freeman for one of them, I still would have won because looking at his lineup, he probably wouldn't have played both of them. But it's the knowing that if he did play both, he would have won. That's the painful part.
It's the competitiveness in the league that we need to maintain the integrity of.
Right.
I mean, if we want to continue on, another bad beat that's, I guess you could kind of say, Jake just completely forgot to drop somebody off his team to allow the trade to go through where Matt Dahl would have gotten DeAndre Hopkins.
Is that why?
Yes, that is exactly why. The trade was accepted. It was ready to go through. Thal came here to yell at me on Sunday, and it was actually because Jake forgot to drop somebody off his
And
team.
John might have won his game too if that trade actually went through.
You know, it's crazy how things work out.
Another Babby we got to talk about. If your wide receiver had a colorful name, he disappointed you. A.J. Brown, Antonio Brown, Hollywood Brown, and A.J. Green all combined for 10 catches and 94 yards.
That's a pretty good stat in 1 week.
If it was one player, that's great.
Where did you get that stat?
I was just looking at all four of them because as A.J. Brown and Antonio Brown stockholder, it did not feel good.
No, and then you guys were making fun of me about AJ Green getting a big fat 0 too. So.
Right. Speaking of that, Cats, I assume you had plenty for breakfast this morning with those 2 goose eggs you had in your lineup.
Yeah, I was nice and full this morning. I had a big whopping, 66 points this past week. And we all clapped on Sunday when I actually broke 50. So it was a real accomplishment.
Right.
I'm very proud of the team.
And the last thing I got to mention is that this hurts some stockholders at this table that Ronald Jones made Tampa Bay Leonard Fournette this week with 192 yards and 1 touchdown.
Yeah, pretty incredible. I mean, that 99-yard touchdown was amazing to watch. He blew by pretty much everyone. He's a big dude and he's fast as hell. So
as a Leonard Fournette owner in the other league, I think that backfield is so messed up to the point that Bruce Arians doesn't even know who's going to start on a week-to-week basis.
Because the typical Bruce Arians formula is once your starting running back misses a few catches and fumbles, you're out for the rest of the game. But for the first time in his coaching career, he just kept him in and was rewarded with a 98-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, but that's a 98-yard touchdown. You take that away, who actually gets the bulk of the carries? It's like, is it going to be Fournette? Is it going to be...
You take that away, Ronald Jones still has 100 yards, my man.
I think people sleep on Rojo.
Yeah.
He's a great
He is a
player,
good
big
runner.
dude.
No, he runs hard. He actually does run hard. I mean, I don't have Fournette in this league, and I'm glad that Aiden does since he has to start him after a week-to-week basis. And if Aiden doesn't make playoffs, I think everyone in the league's happy. So,
yeah. We would all be extremely happy.
Yep.
Just the amount of nonsense he talks week to week.
All right, so now to get into the fun part of our fantasy show, the Why You're Wrong segment. And the first name I want to bring up is quarterback Josh Allen. Brian Tambo's pick. So Josh Allen this season has thrown for 2,900 yards, 21 touchdowns to 7 picks. He's also rushed for 280 yards, 5 touchdowns with 4 fumbles. Josh averages 24.9 points per game and is QB2 on the year. So what are we wrong about, Brian?
what are we wrong about? The turnovers. The turnovers are what hold him back. Well, the first thing, what did he get? He got like 30 points 2 weeks ago, and then he got 27 points last week, or 23 points, whatever it was. Then he went like 4 straight weeks with less than 20 points. But he also had like 2 or 3 touchdowns in that time span, and he also had so many turnovers, but the only thing that keeps him going is his rushing. And that's the same thing with Kyler Murray. Like, Kyler Murray is like a beast, and it's just because of his rushing. Like, you put anyone else in there, like, he's not putting up those points. But I think Josh Allen's going to produce for the rest of the year. And when Week 13 comes around, I play 1, and they're just against San Fran on Monday Night Football, and he beats them there. It's gonna be a good feeling.
I think one of the key things about Josh Allen is the few haters were feeling good about themselves when we had those few weeks where he's just putting up duds. But mainly, those were 2 really bad weather games, and I think the other one was just that 1 week where your QB's just not going to put up points.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the weather played a huge factor into it. Like, what was the first game when he played? It was against the Chiefs when it was like downpouring that game. Like, you couldn't even like throw the ball whatsoever. People were just dropping it left and right. So I don't even blame it on him. But he still put up 16, which is more than what most starting quarterbacks are doing in the league anyways. So right. I'm happy with Josh for the rest of the season.
I think his worst beat so far this year was that whack game versus the Jets where their kicker kicked like 8 field goals and made 6 of them, and that's all the points they scored.
Yeah, but he still put up double digits too, and he only scored 1 touchdown. And actually, I don't even think he scored a touchdown that game, which is just like the worst game possible for him. But he still put up like 16 points, which like wasn't that bad, but it wasn't a typical 30-point week for Josh Allen.
But it beats your average quarterback, which is the goal.
Exactly.
All right. While you're wrong, John, could you tell us about Washington's receiver, Terry McLaurin? Before you get into your points, on the year, he has 86 targets for 57 receptions for 787 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a fumble. Now, he also, for some reason, has 2 rushes for 30 yards. He averages 14 points per game, and he's wide receiver 10 on the year.
Yeah, I mean, going into the season, I heard a lot of slander on Terry McLaurin. He's a second-year player, but if anyone watched him last year, he didn't put up big numbers because he started to come on the second half of the year. This year, coming in, you got to think about the team too, right? Washington football team is usually playing from behind, right? And so they're throwing the ball, they're gunslinging, and Terry McLaurin is the only receiver on that team. Really, I don't know. Can any of you guys name another receiver on the Washington Redskins
I actually
football
can't.
team?
Besides Logan Thomas, the tight end.
Yes,
That's about it.
I know their last
Not
names.
relevant.
There's Sims,
Yes.
who catches
Okay.
a pass every now and
Steven
then.
Sims.
Steven Sims.
Okay. All right. You guys
J.D.
got me there.
McKissick, if you count him as their slot receiver now.
Yeah, you could. But
You are right. Out of pure receivers, he's the only option. And I think because of that, as he's shown throughout the season, he is very matchup proof.
yeah, he is the best player on that offense by far. He's a dog. So he puts up a ton of points. He's had 2 weeks over 20 points, and he's just consistent. He puts up double-digit points every week, but 2 weeks. Only 3 touchdowns on the year, which is slightly disappointing, but you can't ask for more out of a wide receiver too.
Right. Even with his he has a few handful of hard matchups especially during playoffs. Even though you get worried about those good passing defenses, Scary Terry has proved that he's almost immune to bad defense or good defense.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
Sadly, the best receiver in that division, in the worst division in football too. So that says a lot.
Yep, and all the quarterback controversy going on there with Alex Smith is the
Check
starting
down
now.
Alex Smith.
Check down Alex Smith gets the job done. What
Yeah.
he threw for 300
Yeah, he
yards?
threw for
He did.
300 as one of his first games. He could easily go for another 300 yards this week. Alex Smith has been a discussion of a potential streamer this week, especially if your starting quarterback is on bye or has a really awful matchup.
Do you think he's going to throw 55 times again, though, this week? That was a lot.
It was a lot.
That was a lot.
Especially when he doesn't have a leg.
Right.
He's playing Cincy though, so
Right,
he actually might be a good start.
Because since he's not a fantastic defense, we've seen Joe Burrow also put up points, so this could quickly become a very underwhelming shootout. Be great for fantasy, but no one wants to watch this game.
Don't watch. Just look at Stat Tracker.
Now, I want to tell you guys why you're wrong about my wide receiver, DJ Chark. I know. So, on the year, he's got 58 targets, 37 receptions, 493 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Incredible.
He averages 11.5 points per game, and he's wide receiver 33 on the year. So, a lot of people, like myself, drafted him high with the potential of them always being down this season and always having to come back, which means they're going to throw the ball a lot more. He had a fantastic year last year for half the season. He was the wide receiver 8 on the year, even with Minshew. Now, this year has been rough because Minshew has not been magical at all. But the bright spot, and why I want to say why people might be wrong about him, is he seems to have a chemistry with their new quarterback, Jake Luton. And just from the 2 games I've seen, they're not afraid to throw the ball deep with this kid. And besides one short pass, if he wasn't throwing into the wind that is going 25 miles per hour in the opposite direction, they would have connected on a 60-yard touchdown. But looking at his schedule, he has 4 soft games against really soft defenses coming up. But I'm not saying he's going to go right back to being a wide receiver 1. What I'm saying is he's going to be a more dependable wide receiver 2. And if your opponent sees him at least in your flex, it could be a good week for DJ Chark.
I think DJ Chark's nothing more than a bench player, to be honest.
Okay.
However,
Well, yeah,
with
in a 12-team
Minshew,
league, he can be a starter.
With Minshew in a 12-team league, I think DJ Chark could be a starter. He's like a low-end wide receiver 3.
Mm-hmm.
With Luton, I think that he's been doing good enough to this point, but there's no way he's going to be able to keep this up. I just don't see it whatsoever. And there's too many targets. There's too many people on that team anyways. You got Cole, you got James Robinson taking all the way the targets. If Luton throws for 300 yards, DJ Chark does well. If Luton throws for 190 yards, DJ Chark gets 2 catches for 26 yards. It's hit or miss every week, and that's why he's a wide receiver 3. Maybe a flex play, but I don't know.
We'll see how he does against Blitzburg next week.
Oh.
Could be a
What
rough
did
go.
AJ Green just do against them?
A big, fat
Goose
zero.
egg.
Goose. But that being said, Pittsburgh's defense has actually, their weakness is the wide receiver. They are the 9th worst at defending against wide receivers on the year so far.
I did.
You would have
notice
thought
that,
when you
actually.
start AJ Green, but I guess not.
Right. Also, the 3 defenses he plays afterwards are also in the top 10 against worst at defending receivers. It's the weeks after the playoff weeks where you don't want to play him because he's got some tough matchups.
Mm-hmm.
If I had DJ Chark on my team, I would consider benching him.
I would have started him.
Over AJ Green. Over AJ Green.
It definitely depends on who your guys are on your team. For me, I have 2 dogs at wide receiver, so DJ Chark is at most a flex play, depending on who my other flex options for me at the moment. But for some people out there, he might be your wide receiver too. So I'm saying the next 4 weeks might be a little bit better than the past few weeks.
Yeah, true. I mean, considering the flex options, there's not many good flex players like where we were reviewing last week. So I guess DJ Chark isn't that bad of an option.
I'd
but
rather
still.
stream a running back like a Wayne Gallman in my flex play than start DJ Chark, especially against Pittsburgh.
Valid. All right, Gatsy. I'd like you to tell us why we're wrong about wide receiver Robby Anderson. Now, I know where this is probably going to be coming from, but just let me get the stats out first.
Go ahead.
On the year, he has 86 targets, 64 receptions for 773 yards, and 1 touchdown and a rush for 3 yards. He averages 11.6 points per game, and he's the wide receiver 17 on the year.
Okay, so why we're wrong about Robby Anderson. Earlier this week, like stated previously in this episode, Matt Thal tried to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. He was using Robby Anderson as his point marker of saying he's just as good as DeAndre Hopkins, and that is
Blasphemy.
wrong.
Crazy.
So wrong. Robby Anderson does not have nearly the athleticism or skill that DeAndre Hopkins has. And while their stats may be similar currently this year, it's just not true. DeAndre Hopkins is a much better receiver. If you even look at this week's past results, the Carolina Panthers were playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, and Anderson only had 6 targets for 4 receptions and 21 yards. DeAndre Hopkins had 12 targets for 7 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, that touchdown and a majority of those yards came off of a Hail Mary, but you're not even getting that look unless you're DeAndre Hopkins, arguably the best receiver in the league.
It's totally valid. You guys have any other input on it?
Commissioner came with the stats. That's all I care about.
Oh, yeah. Good, pretty incredible.
Give him
I'm impressed with
respect.
you. I will say Robby Anderson has shown out this year over what he did with the Jets the past few years. He was nothing more than a deep threat. Now he's a possession guy. He's getting a ton of targets a game. It's impressive what he's done. Slender man.
And no Teddy Bridgewater now. So now who do we got? Will Greer coming in, throwing Robby Anderson the ball. So thank God that trade didn't go through, or else Dahl's team would be stacked and Jake would not have beaten John, actually, which was just funny.
Exactly. Robby Anderson for the rest of the year is projecting a little under 13 points a game. DeAndre Hopkins is projecting over 17 points a game. That it's just complete blasphemy that he even thought that was a reasonable comparison.
Right. So you guys ready to play a game?
Born ready.
Let's go.
So if Teddy Bridgewater didn't get hurt, we'd have a different outlook on Robby Anderson for the rest of the season than we do now. So this is more going to be in a sense of how you might view him next year. So round 1 of this game. Now, the 3 characters that I found to compare Robby Anderson to, you all have stock invested in each of these players. So it's going to be fun to see how each of you guys reacts to the names I'm going to read.
All right.
So round 1, Robby Anderson or Tyler Boyd?
Tyler Boyd.
So targets per game.
I
who
can't
has
say
more?
that with a straight face.
Yeah.
Robby Anderson, he is the lead guy on that team. I mean, Tyler Boyd, I love Tyler Boyd till the day I die.
Tyler Boyd is very good.
He is.
However, Robby Anderson has produced more than Tyler Boyd.
So just
Till this date.
give me a name answer. Who has more targets per game? Robby Anderson or Tyler Boyd?
Tyler Boyd, I think so.
Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, I'd say Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, he gets like...
It
10 to
is
12.
Robby Anderson.
Really?
Wow.
It is close though. Robby Anderson has 8.6. Tyler Boyd has 8.4.
Okay.
Who has more yards per game?
Robby Anderson, he's had some big
Let's
games.
say Robby.
Yeah, I'll just go with Tyler Boyd, but I think it's Robby Anderson.
It is Robby Anderson.
Okay.
His 77.3 compared to Tyler Boyd's 69.4.
John, this is your receiver over here.
Right. Who has more points per game?
Tyler Boyd has scored some tutties this
Robby
year.
Anderson.
I don't know. Robby Anderson doesn't have a lot of touchdowns this year.
John, you're on Tyler Boyd?
I will say Tyler Boyd, yes.
Gatsy?
I'm going to say, just going over the stats.
Can't look up stats,
Yeah, no
Gats, during
cheating.
this.
All right. Well, not looking up stats now.
Not
Real
this
example
segment.
for the rest of the league cheating as a
Yeah,
commissioner.
terrible. I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Robby. I think Robby does.
Tyler Boyd.
Is that your answer?
No, it's Robby Anderson.
It is Tyler Boyd.
Wow.
With 12.8 compared to Robby Anderson's 11.6, and it's honestly on the touchdowns.
Yeah, I am a fan of Tyler Boyd. I had him last year in fantasy, and that man gets every single red zone
Yeah,
target.
you know, he's an older guy. I mean, I coming into this year, I thought he was younger, but he's just coming on in the past few years. I mean, he's directly benefiting from the lack of AJ Green.
I was gonna say.
This guy does not show up. He does not have the attitude. Tyler Boyd is a tough receiver. He'll take hits, and he's got the trust of Joe Burrow, which is the most important thing for a fantasy receiver.
Hey, maybe you should trade Tyler Boyd for DeAndre Hopkins to see if it works out.
It's too late in the league now.
So-
I would try to push that through.
On the year, so we know Robby Anderson is the wide receiver 17, Tyler Boyd is the wide receiver 18.
Okay.
And even though Tyler Boyd has scored more points, it's just the fact that Tyler Boyd has had a bye week and Robby Anderson has not.
Okay.
Next on the list. This one's going to hurt. Robby Anderson or Julio Jones?
Robby Anderson.
So,
Julio Jones has been hurt. He had a
sure.
few games where he was out. There was a game or two where he just didn't show up because he was playing hurt. I don't think that's fair to compare the two.
but you got to compare the two because one was a first round draft pick and one went undrafted. And was
It's
picked up
definitely
off
Robby
waivers,
because
so-
Julio's been hurt a couple games.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
So-
Robby could be a league
And
winner.
there's some dogs on
Right.
Atlanta. Like Calvin Ridley needs to get his targets.
So,
Always gets the red zone
targets per game, Robby Anderson or Julio Jones?
Robby Anderson.
Robby Anderson. I just know
Robby.
that Julio's been out.
It is Robby. Robbie's 8.6 compared to Julio's 8.
Why? Calvin Ridley.
Yes.
Who has more yards per game, Julio Jones or Robby Anderson?
Robby Anderson because he doesn't score a touchdown, only yards.
Robby Anderson.
But neither does Julio too. But Julio's been hurt, so I
Actually, no. I'm going to swap
Are,
it. I think
are
it's
these
Julio.
stats going just off of the games Julio's played? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the ones he's played.
Oh, just the ones he's
Just
played.
the ones he's
I'm
played.
gonna go Julio.
Oh, I'm going Julio then.
It is. Julio has 91.1 compared to Robbie's.
I thought we were talking about
Yeah, I think
77.
Julio had a game where he was approaching 200 yards.
Oh, yeah.
That'll do it for you.
Yeah.
So who has more fantasy points per game?
Games Julio's played.
Yes.
Julio's, for the first time in his life, he's scoring touchdowns this year.
I'll give the edge to Julio.
Yeah, I think I'll go with Julio on this one as well.
I'd love to go Julio, but I'm just gonna say Robby because everybody else went Julio.
So you might as well just get rid of the guy on your team, Gatsy, because it is Julio Jones at 14.8 compared to Robby Anderson at 11.6.
Okay. Alright. My guys, he balls out when he plays. Just has to be on the field.
Now this last one is really going to hurt the people that invested a lot of stock in this player. And the reason this one really hurts is because they're on the same team. Robby Anderson or DJ Moore? Targets per game. Who has more?
Robby Anderson.
Robby Anderson.
Robby.
It is Robby.
As a
8.6 compared to 6.9.
As a DJ Moore owner, I feel like I know that.
Who has more yards per game?
Robby Anderson.
Yeah, Robby Anderson.
Well, I'm just gonna go with DJ Moore.
It is Robby Anderson. Damn. 77.3
I knew it was Robby
Going against the
Anderson.
job doesn't work.
compared to 73.6.
DJ
No.
Moore's terrible.
Who has more points per game?
Ooh.
I don't know. DJ Moore has those games just out of nowhere where he just goes off, scores like 2-3 touchdowns.
He does
It's
have
ridiculous. Him and Curtis Samuel.
He does have games where he has like
five.
5 points, but there's also, I was going over his stats the other night. He has like games where he's like 20. He had 5 games over 20 points in PPR. So I'm going to go with DJ Moore.
I'm gonna go DJ.
I'm gonna go Robby Anderson to go against the grain.
It is DJ Moore.
Yeah.
DJ Moore is on track for 11.7 points per game, while Robby Anderson is 11.6.
Ooh, barely gets
So-
the edge.
So that literally just tells you all the hope you had for DJ Moore has been taken by Robby Anderson. And they're that close where if you just got some of Robby Anderson's production in what you thought DJ Moore was going to do this year, DJ Moore could easily be a top 10 receiver. But Mr. Matt Ja Rule has said, no, I love Robby Anderson. Sorry, DJ Moore.
Is he valuable enough to trade for Hopkins? No.
No, it's inexcusable.
Especially after this segment.
And we're going to take a TV timeout before we dive into our next section. All right, welcome back into the show, ladies and gentlemen. We're now approached the hardest segment to talk about the hard to swallow pills. And the first guy on our list, we got to talk about wide receiver Christian Kirk. Brian has made this selection. So now on the year, Christian Kirk has 46 targets for 27 receptions for 427 yards and 6 touchdowns. He averages 11.6 points per game. He's the wide receiver 32 on the year and drafted as the consensus of wide receiver 46.
I think that Christian Kirk is a good player. He started the year terrible, and that's not his fault. That was Kyler Murray just forcing the ball at DeAndre Hopkins, getting 10-plus targets a game.
It's his new toy.
And then when week 4 or week 5 comes around, this man's dropped double digits 5 weeks in a row. However, he did have a bad week last week, and that is solely because DeAndre Hopkins just forced it and just went off. But that's just going to happen. Like, Christian Kirk's nothing more than a wide receiver 3, but his upside could be wide receiver 1 numbers with an MVP of Kyler Murray on his team. And they're playing Seattle this week, which is ranked the worst defense in the league. So I think that Christian Kirk bounces back, but honestly, like, he's going to have his bad games, going to have his good games. He did drop 4.7 points against Gatsby, but thank God that he dropped 2 goose eggs, and I took the win anyway, so I'll take it.
Because I think the thing to think about, which actually worried everyone about DeAndre Hopkins at the beginning of the year, was the offense that Cliff Kingsbury plays in is a very air raid, college-friendly offense, which spreads the ball around a lot. So everyone was super low on all the Cardinals receivers because no one really knew where the ball was going to go. But we saw the year that it doesn't matter. DeAndre Hopkins will soak up all the targets. But I think now they're finding a more balanced system where once the defense locks into Hopkins or another option, they're just going to hit Kirk on these deep bombs at least 2 or 3 times a game.
And that's what you got to pray for, too. I feel like you need to pray for like a 50-yard touchdown from Kirk, or he has less than 10 points. And he's done it.
He's a deep threat.
He's a deep threat. That's all he is. But that's why he's hard to swallow. It's because if you put him in your lineup, he's either 2.4 points or he's 20.6 points. So it's like,
if you think about it, you have DeAndre Hopkins, who's just the best receiver on the field, maybe in the league. You have Larry Fitzgerald, who won't go away, a possession guy, and then you have Kirk, who will. He's a deep guy. He's going to catch the 75-yard touchdown, late into the third quarter where he has 0 points up until then, and then it's a wild card.
He was that guy last year too when Hopkins wasn't even there. Like, he actually produced like very well in fantasy playoffs last year. People forget about that, and now he's starting to like put it all back together because Kyler Murray's just absolutely exploding and running away with the MVP right now.
So I just wish Larry Fitzgerald could be classified as a tight end because that's his role. He doesn't go deep anymore. He's just the safety blanket.
Yeah. He will catch the ball when you need a catch on third down. He's a great player. And then don't forget about Andy Isabella, UMass homegrown.
UMass native.
Yeah, he's there as well. He gets some targets, so it's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense.
Andy Isabella actually caught the ball to set up DeAndre Hopkins' Hail Mary, which is cool to watch.
Yeah.
Even though every single Arizona Cardinals fan is kicking themselves because they took Andy Isabella 3 picks before the Seattle Seahawks took DK Metcalf. So that's the kick in the gut that they have to live with.
Every other team is kicking themselves.
That is
for not picking DK Metcalf in the draft.
Did Andy Isabella have the most yards in college football that year, though? Yes, he did.
Yep.
So, and he's a burner.
And he's a burner. That's all he is. He's not DK Metcalf, who can probably squish Andy Isabella into pieces.
All right, for our next hard to swallow pill, John, we're going to talk about your pick, running back David Montgomery. On the year, he has 131 attempts for 472 yards and 1 touchdown, and also 41 targets for 30 receptions for 212 yards, 1 touchdown and a fumble. Averages 9.5 points per game. He's the running back 20 on the year, drafted as the consensus running back 27. So I have my own reasons why I think David Montgomery might be on this list, but I want to hear from you.
Well, I had high hopes for him. To be frank, he's the lead guy on the Bears, primarily running football team. He gets 20 touches a game, which there's not many running backs in this league that get 20 touches a game these days with the running back by committee. And I think I thought he was a good player, but Nick Foles has foiled my plans. He is god-awful. I can't stand him. And here we are, getting 9 points a game out of my RB2 when I was hoping for 15, 16 on a week-to-week basis. So it's been tough. The Bears just can't figure it out, and I had a little more faith in them.
You can clearly tell that Matt Nagy has a great mind for offense.
I like Dave Montgomery just because he gets the touches, but that offense is just so hard to watch. I just can't trust Dave Montgomery whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I have Allen Robinson in another league, and it's like just throw the ball. Just throw the ball to him. He's the best receiver on the field by far. But I'm telling you, Nick Foles folds under pressure. It's terrible.
I thought that the Bears were actually going to win last night, but Kirk Cousins broke his streak of 0 for 9 again at the spread on a Monday Night Football and is now 1 for 9 on Monday Night Football because Nick Foles is terrible.
He was so excited.
I know.
Unnecessarily.
I think
I could win on Monday Night Football and I probably wouldn't be that excited.
I
like
think
that.
one of the hardest things about David Montgomery is he gets the yards, he gets the touches, he just doesn't get the touchdowns. Last year, identical to stats to Todd Gurley when it came to rushes, yards, catches, and receiving yards. The difference was Todd Gurley had over 10 touchdowns, while David Montgomery had like 6 on the year. The problem is we're getting that again this year where David Montgomery, he's getting the attempts, he's getting the yards, he's only found the end zone twice.
Well, he's only getting the yards because he's getting the attempts. He's only averaging 3.6 yards per carry. That's despicable.
It's despicable, but when I think the problem is the Bears quarterbacks are so anemic, the defense can be like, well, you have Allen Robinson, but we can still put 12 guys in the box because the refs won't notice because our defense is that good and stop them anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, when you can't throw the ball at all, how are you expecting to get points for your running back?
Mm-hmm.
All right, our next hard to swallow pill on the list, Gatsy. Wide receiver A.J. Green. On the year, 68 targets, 31 receptions. I'm pretty sure that means he's caught less than half his passes for 316 yards and 0 touchdowns. Averages 5.2 points per game. He was drafted as the wide receiver 28 and is currently wide receiver 80 on the year.
Yeah,
are there that many receivers in the league?
Wide receiver 7?
So if we're going to be honest, I looked at, when I was making this trade, I looked at his few weeks beforehand projections. He had 11 targets for 8 receptions and 96 yards in week 6 for 13.6 points. 11.7 points in week 7 with 82 yards and 7 receptions. And then he had his terrible week of 2.9 points versus the Titans in week 8. I thought that was going to be his low. I thought that's where the floor is. He's got to bye the following week after. He's going to come back healthy, strong, and just ready to go to town against the Steelers, who do have a good defense, but I at least thought Joe Burrow would be able to find him the ball once.
I do want to say that I did laugh and tell him that A.J. Green and Giovanni Bernard were going to score less than 10 points against Pittsburgh's defense, and he didn't listen to me. And he started both of them, and they combined for 6.7 points.
I didn't have many options, though, because half of my team was on a bye week.
Any other option on the free agency would have been better than
that. Really not much on the free agent market. Really not much.
Well, better than 0 points.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
yes. Yeah, hindsight's 20/20. But in any case, I thought that he would have done at least something in my first week having him. Obviously, getting 0 points is absolutely killer. So
there were quarterbacks that you could have started over him. Who was it that caught a touchdown? Was it Josh Allen? Or
Josh Allen caught a touchdown.
Josh Allen caught a touchdown.
I probably could have started a lineman who would have gotten more points than him.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's why this is called hard to swallow. That was a hard pill to swallow.
I got one that's been even harder to swallow. It has been so hard dealing with this player all year. I want to talk about wide receiver Kenny Golladay for the Lions.
Man.
On the year, 32 targets, 20 receptions, 338 yards, 2 touchdowns. Averages 11.2 points per game. And that sounds like all right, but the thing is, he's been gone for half the year due to injury. And the games he has played in, he's given you floor games. And here's the part that hurts. He was consensusly drafted as a wide receiver 7. He is currently ranked on the year wide receiver 70. And the part that hurts, the kicking of the man while he's down, the last 4 weeks, his fellow receiver, Marvin Jones, has been the wide receiver 7.
Yeah. That is tough to watch. All right, so in this league, I do have Kenny Golladay, and that hurts. I'm in 8th place right now. I did not pick up Marvin Jones, which was dumb. I think Juan already had him already, but In my other league, I picked up Marvin Jones to, alter Kenny Golladay because he's been out for the last 4 weeks. And it definitely hurts not having Kenny Golladay out there. It also hurts not having Calvin Ridley out there, which is definitely putting a big impact on my team. But when Kenny Galladay's out, when he's out there, he puts up 14 to 15 points a week. And it's like, all right, yeah, I mean, if he's out there, sure. But if you have Marvin Jones, like Marvin Jones putting up at least like 11 to 12 a week now, I mean, if you really put it into perspective, Marvin Jones is just going to go straight back to a wide receiver 5 when Kenny Golladay gets back. And who knows if it's this week or it's next week. But as long as I make the playoffs and he's back in the lineup, I mean, you don't really want to play my team with him in there.
No.
To build off that, if Kenny Golladay is playing and he's healthy, you start him every time.
Right.
He's a great receiver, and you could tell even from his games this year. He got 100 yards in 2 of his 4 games that he was legitimately healthy. He's got 2 touchdowns. So I mean.
And just to go off that, even in the 4 games that he did actually play the full games, he's averaging 13.95 points in those 4 games. So he's a clear starter.
An easier pill to swallow than most.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the problem is, though, where you drafted him, you needed him to be a killer wide receiver 1 in most leagues. And if he wasn't, he could also add it to the sabotage, which is why your team might not be in playoffs at the moment. Because if you had the misfortune of drafting a running back in the first round or second round who either got hurt or got his role reduced, and then went Kenny Golladay, you're probably not in the playoffs right now.
No, that is true. However, I do have to say that I am 5th in points still while losing Calvin Ridley, Kenny Golladay, Myles Gaskin, Christian McCaffrey. Now, yeah, we have Juan Ramon in 4th place, who has the least amount of projected points remaining.
Did you just mention Myles Gaskin as a loss on your team?
Yes. Myles Gaskin is actually 3rd in red zone carries out of all running backs in the league when he plays.
Yeah, but did you draft him?
No, I picked him up.
Exactly.
However, still a loss, though, because he was actually producing as like an RB2 for the year.
Yeah.
I mean, a 12 team,
I feel bad for
in a
McCaffrey
12,
owners.
Who's better? Who would you rather have, Gaskin or Montgomery?
Montgomery.
By namesake, you just want to pick Montgomery.
I think we want to.
I might-
If you were looking back at the stats,
That's
My
gotta
gut
be next
says
week.
I might want Gaskin because Miami has shown that they really want a feature back by the way they've used Gaskin this year. And Gaskin gets yards. He gets yards when he gets the ball. He's not getting stuffed at the line like David Montgomery is.
exactly. And I think, and he also catches balls out of the backfield, so it's like he's getting 8, 11, 12, 7, 17, 14, 12.
What about with Tua now? They're more of a passing offense.
I think the defense is stepping up for the Miami Dolphins with Tua in that lineup, and I think that Tua is good, but he hasn't done as great as he should be because he only put up 14 fantasy points last week.
I don't think he's needed to win them a game yet. Obviously, he's only played 2 games.
I would agree that you always want a running back on a better than average team.
Yes, 100%. And Dave Montgomery is on a team that can barely score a touchdown.
Fair. Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's why he is my hard pill to swallow.
That's when we're going to take another quick TV timeout. Back from our TV timeout, we are now going to be talking about the moves that have been made, the trades at the deadline. First trade we got to talk about is Juan and Jake's trade. Juan trades Amari Cooper, wide receiver 21, Latavius Murray, wide receiver running back 38, Kenyon Drake, running back 23, and Jake trades Joe Mixon, running back 25.
Not good. No,
Not good.
No, this is he got bamboozled. Right. So I can't believe Latavius Murray was involved in a trade. He's nothing more than a handcuff.
Right.
Meanwhile, Joe Mixon, when he plays, he's a freaking. I drafted him in the first round, one of my leagues, number 10 pick. I mean, it's just unbelievable that the commissioner would let this trade go through.
Joe Mixon continues to upset fantasy owners year after year. Yet when he does play, he is good, but he always gets hurt or he's just not good enough. Like I had Joe Mixon last year and how'd that turn out? Wasn't a great running back. This year he started off really good and then he got hurt and now he's just disappointing fantasy owners year after year. The reason why Juan was so upset about, why is Dahl's trade why is it going through? Like it should be veto, blah, 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 blah. It's because Juan lost that trade, to be honest. Kenyon Drake might be better at the end of the season than Joe Mixon if these injuries keep staying up.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, it's true though. When the evaluation came around, I'm pretty sure Juan was actually if favored by maybe a point or two, it was not a very good trade at all. I mean, Joe Mixon, obviously, he had a high of 39 points this year. But if you're not playing and if you're not healthy, you don't get anything.
There
It's
are
zero
few running
points.
backs in this league that can score 39 points in a game.
No.
All right, he is a game-changing league winner type player when he's healthy. He gets the carries. He's a better player than most running backs.
But even in years past, I don't think he's played a full season yet since coming into the league.
The Bengals have also been terrible. Now they have an offense.
Joe Mixon
That's
playing.
very true, but still, he can't stay healthy even with this offense. That's good.
Joe Mixon playing is a very good running back, and he can put up 39 points, especially with Joe Burrow under center now. Like, makes him that much better. Gio Bernard plays games; he's dropping 20 points.
Exactly.
Imagine Joe Mixon comes in, but the thing is, will his injuries keep up, and will it keep him out of games? We don't know. Why would you trade for an injured running back when we don't even know if he's going to even come back at this point?
He's pretty much trading Kenyon Drake, who's been basically a first-round bust this year. Amari Cooper, even with Andy Dalton, I don't feel super confident in.
Mm-mm.
So it's almost just like Juan traded everyone that just kind of failed on his team for the player that has failed, Jake, but has the most promise out of all four of those players.
If you were the commissioner, Mr. John Burke, would you let that go through?
I would be okay with it, mainly because the problem is since Jake's team is not competitive, it's harder to deal with because it feels like Jake is getting robbed in every situation. But if both teams were, let's say, even and both active in the playoff hunt, you're trading Kenyon Drake, who gets about 20 opportunities a game, for Joe Mixon, who could put up big points, and you do need Amari Cooper in a world where Andy Dalton can actually make Amari Cooper productive. I think with the limited production from Andy Dalton and Amari Cooper and the potential of the 20 touches for Kenyon Drake in a high-powered offense, even though that's only come to fruition once or twice this year, at this point in the season, I think both sides are fairly like a balanced amount of risk.
I could not disagree more.
No.
I think Amari Cooper is good as done for the rest of the season. Kenyon Drake is being overtaken by Chase Edmonds, who's an overall better player. He's pretty much the starter now. And then again, like I said, Latavius Murray, he's a handcuff. That's all he is.
Latavius Murray's a handcuff. Kenyon Drake just came off 16 carries for 100 yards. He did fumble, yet he was hurt and he was limited coming into the game. Yet they gave him his starting role. He went in, he took 16 carries. We don't know if he's going to get 20 carries next week. And Amari Cooper, yes, I also agree that he's definitely a bust. Andy Dalton in that offense is just the worst thing to even watch in football. But it's like you have Joe Mixon, who doesn't even play this week, and we're crunching into playoffs, and you need to win now. Like, why would you try to do that trade when you know that he's hurt and he might not even play this week again? And then you got 2 more weeks left and you're fighting for a playoff spot? Like, what's the point?
I mean, yeah, the whole argument is needing points for the end of the year. If your guy's not going to be able to play and get out there, you're not getting points. That's obviously what happened to a bunch of teams this week where I think 3 or 4 teams had under 100 points. So if a guy's available and he's going to get you points, you got to put him in.
All right, now to talk about Juan's other trade with our commissioner, Gatsby. Juan traded away A.J. Green, wide receiver 80 on the season, and David Johnson, running back 27. Well, Matt traded away Adam Thielen, who's the wide receiver 7 on the season.
I hate Adam Thielen. I have a personal vendetta against Adam Thielen. I have had him in years past. I continue to get him in years, and for whatever reason, whenever I need him in a big game, he's never there for me. Now, this week, again, would it have been better if I started him instead of trading him away? Yes, it obviously would have been. It would have been a much more competitive game, probably getting closer to like 85 for me versus 88 for Brian, but I needed to get rid of him. I had enough of him, and I wanted some new fresh blood with A.J. Green.
So would you have rather a combination of Amari Cooper, Latavius Murray, and Kenyon Drake for Adam Thielen, or the 2 players you got?
At the time when David Johnson wasn't going on the IR and he was still just out for a concussion, I would have kept with the trade that I had. Because like I said before, the projections that AJ Green had in the weeks before he played the Titans and before the bye week, he was projecting upwards. He was in the low teens, doing well, coming back, and then he's just pooped his pants. So David Johnson also going immediately on the IR 2 days after I traded for him, when Jonathan Taylor has been an absolute zero in my lineup. It would have been a help, but no help now.
Do you know what's hard? I saw someone drop Jonathan Taylor recently.
Yeah.
Do you think he's droppable? Is he someone you put on your bench for hopefully something to turn around? Because the Colts have a good playoff schedule for running backs, but now it's just they are riding the hot hand. 1 week it could be Hines, another week it could be Wilkins, and it's only Jonathan Taylor if they're on the 1 yard line.
I mean, if I'm going to give you a little insight to my team, I did go to pick up Hines off the waiver wire this week, and I do believe I have the number 1 waiver, so I should be getting him. He's an automatic start over Jonathan Taylor because Jonathan Taylor just doesn't produce.
I disagree.
I guess we're going to see in hindsight what the turnout of that will be.
No, it's the Colts offense for the past few years. They love to feed everyone. It's running backs in and out, receivers in and out. You can't really trust anyone on that offense just because they love to spread the ball around.
Exactly. And everyone's going to pick up Nyheim Hines this week, and I guarantee he probably gets less than 10 points.
Mm-hmm. He's a game flow guy. Last week I was impressed by his running ability. He was breaking off some big chunk runs, but more or less he's a game flow guy. He's going to do really well when they're behind in the game and he catches a lot of passes.
Also, back to Gassie's point, if Adam Thielen is such a disappointment in games, who is the number 7 receiver on the year?
Didn't you just say Adam Thielen? Berkey said Adam Thielen this year. I understand that. I don't like him.
Why would you trade him away when the man just caught 2 touchdowns on Monday Night Football?
Because he
is
really
inconsistent.
hold on, let me pull up the stats. But he is a boomer bust guy. Like, he either gets a week where he has 25, 30 points, or he has a week where he has 4 points. I needed more consistency.
He did have 2. He has 3 weeks this year with 4 points.
Yeah,
and 2 came in the last 2 weeks, and then he blew up again for 20 points.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But also, what did Justin Jefferson do in those 2 weeks? He didn't do anything, and people still love Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm. Because he's not
ranked as the
expected
14th
to produce like that.
Exactly.
Right. That's the hard part about this.
Is it worth David Johnson, though?
Any receiver that has 9 touchdowns,
I
10
needed
weeks
something
through the
more.
year.
John Taylor was only hot at the beginning of the year, and after that, I think since week 6, he's just been 4, 5, 6, 7 points. He hasn't done anything good.
David Johnson is the consistent running back who will get you between 10 and 15 points a week. It's not going to be pretty. You'll never get a boom game out of David Johnson, but he's going to give you that floor that you need to get through the week. But he's not going to win your game. He's not going to lose you a game.
Exactly. Where John Taylor, when I need him to put up the 14, 15 points that he was averaging in the first 6 weeks of the league, as soon as they went on their bye week, he's gotten 4 points, 8 points, and then 4 points again. His projections for the rest of the year are 7 points, so that's what, a 10-yard rushing touchdown? I need something more than that.
Right. So now looking at the fallout of a few previous trades, Brian. So looking at the fallout from your first trade, you traded Marquise Hollywood Brown, the wide receiver 50 on the year, who averages 3.8 points per game the past 2 weeks since you've acquired him. And you give away Hayden Hurst, the tight end 9, who's been averaging 9.7 points per game in the weeks he's played since you traded him, which is only just 1. But I know why you do it, because you had all the other tight ends on your roster, but the 2 tight ends you've played the past 2 weeks have averaged a total of 4.8 points per game.
To be fair, Marquise Brown in his last 3 weeks have played Pittsburgh. He has played Indy in Indy, and he's played New England in New England. So those are 3 games where he deserves to get less than 10 points.
It was also pouring rain in New England.
It was also pouring rain in New England. However, a thing that I see of great value is that in the playoffs, week 15, 16, 17, he has probably a top 5 matchup out of all receivers in the entire league with Jacksonville, Giants, and Cincy. So I don't need Marquise Brown and I don't need Hayden Hurst, but I'd rather have Marquise Brown on my bench than Hayden Hurst because I have Goddard, and I'll just start Goddard any day of the week, and Hayden Hurst and them equal each other out. But I also have Fuller, I also have Calvin, I also have Golladay. It's like I have all these receivers, but like if I really need to start Marquise Brown in the playoffs, his matchups are that much better, and I can start Goddard, which is the same thing as Hayden Hurst.
So actually, let me ask you a quick question then. So you have Calvin Ridley, you have Kenny Golladay, you have Will Fuller, and now you have Marquise Brown.
Okay.
You can only at most play 3 of those 4 guys. When is the situation going to be that you play Marquise Brown or one of the other three at any given time?
When Kenny Golladay re-injures his shoulder, when
Will Fuller is very injury prone.
Will Fuller is very injury prone. Calvin Ridley re-injures his foot. Better have a backup plan than not have a backup plan and have to start someone on the waiver wire when I have to start Zach Pascal on the waiver wire instead of Marquise Brown. I'd rather start Marquise Brown against Jacksonville.
And we know we don't start Colts players.
Exactly.
Right. So which is basically Marquise Brown is your insurance, your safety option in case one of your three dogs goes down.
Exactly.
Are you concerned that Marquise Brown doesn't get over 10 points unless he's targeted at least 6 times? And even then it's a toss-up?
Well, he's a boomer bust player. That's what he is. And it's like he had 3 really bad matchups, and Baltimore does not look like a good team right now. But if Baltimore really wants to make a run for the playoffs, Lamar Jackson needs to play better than he actually is. And he has played probably the top 3 defenses in the past 3 weeks. So
you think the Pats defense is a top D though? They're bad. I mean, Bill Belichick can scheme like a madman.
Is Gilmore and J.C. Jackson not some of the top corners in the league?
Gilmore didn't play this past week.
I know, but still, you have the safeties, you have McCourty, you have J.C. Jackson, who's a top 5 ranked cornerback right now. Like Pat's
5 picks in 5 the past 5 games. Pretty incredible.
It's our run. We cannot stop the run. That's our problem. That's why the Pats defense is so terrible. We can't stop the run. They play action. They throw deep. We lose games like that. It's just stupid. But then
I
again,
think J.C. Jackson has more picks in the past 5 games than the Seahawks have had in the past 5 years.
Exactly. Remember Kyle Arrington?
5 years is a lot, John.
You remember Kyle Arrington a few years ago? He led the league in interceptions. We always have those sneaky cornerbacks that come out of nowhere, and they're just some of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Another point for you is that Hollywood Brown's playoff schedule is Cleveland, Jacksonville, New York Giants.
Yep.
They did bring that up.
Yeah.
Twice.
But you need him to get you points before you even get to the playoffs because we still have 3 weeks before them.
All right. Now talking about the fallout of your other big blockbuster trade. You traded away Ezekiel Elliott, the running back 7, Chris Godwin, wide receiver 51, which is hard to hear, and Mark Andrews, the tight end 5, for Christian McCaffrey, who is the running back 31 with only playing 2 games this season, Christian Kirk, the wide receiver 32 that we talked about earlier today, and Logan Thomas, the tight end 16. In the past 2 weeks, you've had a point differential of plus 22.9 in your favor.
I think that the Christian McCaffrey injury to his shoulder was just awful to hear. I mean, no one would expect that ever. It's just the injured reserves are the reason why they're called the injured reserves for a reason. But if McCaffrey is back for the playoffs and I sneak out and make it into the playoffs, it's going to be very terrifying to watch him drop another 32.1 points, which has still outscored every single player in Dallas lineup that I've made the trade for.
And you also probably made that trade seeing that Chris Godwin is not what he is this year. And seeing how Zeke has just been abysmal without Dak Prescott, you wanted to jump ship from these 2 guys and get as much value as you possibly could, which you clearly just did with this trade.
Exactly. And I think that Christian McCaffrey might be out a little bit more than he's expected just because Teddy Bridgewater got hurt. But I think that he will be back before week 13 and just in time for the playoffs. I just need to be able to squeeze into the playoffs and the trade will work in my favor.
I even think, Zeke was putting up numbers when Dak was still in, but he was fumbling left and right. Like, he wasn't looking great.
It's the game script of the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, if you're going to be down 30 points, Zeke's not going to get any more than 10 fantasy points. He'll probably get less than 10 fantasy points, and that's what we've seen time over time again.
Yeah, since week 5, he hasn't even sniffed 10. He's gotten 8 as his highest point.
That's a good question. Do you just give up on Zeke? In one of my leagues, he was dropped, which I think is absolutely
You can't drop Zeke. He is I think right now he's a running back, low end RB2 until we see maybe with Dalton that he does better. I think also the issue is they no longer have the offensive line that people think Dallas is. They only have 1 All-Pro lineman left, and just all around, if they're not running right behind him, they can't get anywhere on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I mean, I have no faith in Zeke. I had him on my team for 2 weeks, and I was like, can I trade for Christian McCaffrey whatsoever? And I made the trade offer, and I got the text back that said, send it. And I said, okay. And then I sent it, and then it went through.
Good for you. You've never gotten your phone faster.
I even texted Brian asking if he wanted to do that trade because I wasn't sure he wanted Christian McCaffrey.
He thought I was stupid for doing the trade, and yet the man dropped 32.1 points, won me a crucial game that I needed to win One last week. Now I'm playing in Andrew's team, who can't even start a full lineup this week. He's going to have to start someone like Zach Pascal.
Yeah, not a
We're
situation
talking
where
3 wins in a row, potentially sneaking into the playoffs, and we'll see what happens.
Nice. Now moving on to this segment called Flexing the Hardest. And week 10's recap, the top 6 flex players of the week. Ooh, that was bad. Chris comes in at number 6 with playing Mike Davis versus Tampa Bay, projected 13.1, but only managed a 6.4. John comes in at 5th with Tyler Boyd playing Pittsburgh, projected 11.7 and came in at 7.1. Andrew, John's brother, played Brandon Ayuk, projected at 10.4, put up a nice 16.2. Derek played Mike Evans, and yes, does Mike Evans really sound like a flex player? But on Derek's team, he is his 3rd best wide receiver. Projected at 11.5 and came down with 16.7. Now Juan played Marvin Jones versus Washington, projected 10.4, found his way to the end zone and landed with a 19.6.
Wide receiver 2 on the week.
Yeah. And now the number 1 flex play this week, Brian. You're on the train with me. He didn't just put up 1, but he put up 2 touchdowns. Antonio Gibson came in with a 20.5 versus Detroit Lions.
I had a lot of slander for Antonio Gibson.
I hated Antonio Gibson
Yeah.
for so many weeks, and I have a lot of faith in him now. I do think J.D. McKissic might crunch into a little bit of his workload, but as the main back on that team, and Alex Smith, the check down guy of the century, I think that Antonio Gibson's going to get 16 to 20 carries a game for the rest of the season. And with that division where they have to play the Eagles twice, the Giants twice, and the Cowboys twice, he's going to end up eating in those games.
So I think one of the things with that backfield, the problem was all year was is Antonio Gibson on the field? That's awesome. Is J.D. McKissic on the field? That sucks unless you were the vice versa owners. What I did like about their game versus the Lions, they started using formations where both are on the field at the same time, which I think helps both because now the defense has to be prepared for either to get the check down to J.D. McKissic, the screen or run to Antonio Gibson. So I think it helps both backs in the long run.
And it makes sense, too, because Alex Smith can't throw the ball more than 10, 15 yards down the field.
Exactly.
Well, he
Exactly.
only has 1 leg, so.
Yes.
Back in, we're going to be discussing the Week 11 flex players in our league. Now, even though for me, I'm going to start, he's wide receiver 51 on the year. I just feel like this could be one of those games for Thal where Chris Godwin finds his way into the end zone. Are they playing the Rams? Yes, but I think that game could have the potential for maybe a 30-30 game. I'm going to see Ramsey probably going to pick Antonio Brown or Mike Evans the shadow, which means Chris Godwin's going to be the lucky one out of the bunch. That's just always going to be open, and Tom Brady's going to be looking his way first.
No, I agree with that. I think that Chris Godwin probably catches a touchdown, or it could be Antonio Brown, and I think that Ramsey probably is covering Mike Evans the entire game. So, but the Rams defense, time and time again, has shown a great defensive performance. They only really show good defensive performance at home, but I think that Chris Godwin probably could find the end zone. As much as I heard to say because I traded him away, but yeah, no, I agree with that. I think my flex player, honestly, would be, it's sad to say it week after week, and I know you want to put it in here, is Antonio Gibson against Cincy. I think that Washington actually probably beats Cincy this week, and Antonio Gibson scores with 100 yards and a touchdown.
That would make my day, but I don't see it back-to-back weeks happening. I think there's a few other good flex players on the board for me to just blindly pick Gibson again.
I also like Kareem Hunt a lot, too, against Philly. I think that Nick Chubb's pretty solid, and he's taken over the majority of the carries so far, but I think that Kareem Hunt's a really good mix in between the two, and he gets those passing down, so you never know if Baker Mayfield's going to dump it off to Kareem Hunt, breaks a couple tackles, he's probably going to end up scoring this week, so I need Chris to pull off a big win this week, so I'm hoping that Kareem Hunt goes off.
What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of stole my thunder with the Kareem Hunt, but yeah, I see we have 2 guys on the board here, Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones for the Detroit Lions. Here's the thing, if Kenny Golladay is not 100% healthy, then Marvin Jones will most likely go off again. I mean, Carolina's a good team there. I can see Detroit playing from behind for most of the game. So I like both wide receivers this week. I mean, if Golladay is healthy, then like I said, you start him every single time, and he is one of the best flex plays on the board by far because he's a top 10 receiver anyways, and when he's healthy. So So I'll go both Detroit Lions wide receivers on this one.
Gatsy?
I mean, obviously, if Kenny Golladay is healthy, you have to go him, but just to keep it fun, I'm actually going to go with Jarvis Landry. I think that Philly is going to be assuming that the Cleveland Browns are going to try to run all over them. So I think there's going to be a lot of room in the play action game for Landry to get some big yards, actually get some deep down the field looks, and hopefully pop off like a nice long touchdown to over project the 10 points.
Current standings in our league. Right at the top, we got your host, John, with his team DK Country at 8-2. We got Chris's Hayden Tyreek at second place, 7-3. Aiden's The Morgue is in third place at 6-4. Juan's Shiloh Jr., fourth place, 6-4. Gatsy's Pitstained with our fellow manager, John, at 5-5. The Pitstain himself, Gats, with Quintoris Lopez at 5-5. Then on the outside, looking in, we have Andrew's, Alex's team at 5-5. Then we have Brian's, the Injured Reserves, at 5-5. And then we have the team name doesn't matter. We can do better, Thal. Also at 5-5. Yes, that 5 teams at 5-5 with 3 weeks left to go. Then in 10th, we have Messina's Show Me the Money at 3-7. We have Derek's Thal Take My Johnson at 11th at 3-7. And then all the way on the outside, we have Jake's 2-8 Burners, who have been eliminated from playoffs. I think the outliers for this is no one's thrilled that Aiden's injured team and Juan's non-point scoring team are currently in the playoff picture, but that is the luck and cruelness of the fantasy football world. Brian's team is a little bit of an outlier, same with Andrew's, because they both have scored a ton of points, but they are still looking outside of the playoffs.
Well, to start, I think that Eden's team did overcome a lot of obstacles with the injuries that he had to start, considering the team name called the Morgue. I think Justin Herbert was a great start, and now he's starting to get Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler back, so he got lucky with matchups, but his team's definitely going to look brighter for the future. With Juan's team, it definitely cannot say the same. He has the least amount of points against. He has 999. Every other team in the league has over 1,000, which shows not skill, but luck instead. And that definitely pisses off some of the other 5-5 teams, actually 5-5 teams. And he has the third least points for, which also shows another reason why he's just getting lucky. So when it really comes down to the final playoff picture, I think it definitely is going to come between probably me, Gatsy, Andrew, and actually John's team is actually very good. So John probably will sneak into the playoffs. He'll probably sneak into the playoffs.
I have the second most points scored. Don't hate on this. I was almost in first place 2 weeks ago.
You do have Kyler Murray, which is probably the reason why you'll be in 4th or 5th at the end of the season. But I'm just hoping that I can pull off 2 to 3 wins in the next couple of weeks, and I can sneak into the 6th or 5th spot. But I guess we're gonna see what happens.
Yeah, for me, I couldn't be feeling better. I had 2 straight losses. It sucks, but I put up points every single week. It's I give my team a chance to win, and if you have, another team scoring more points like you that time that happened, what can you do? All right, what can you do? I should have started Jacoby Myers over Damian Harris.
Kyler Murray will make sure that your team makes it into the playoffs.
Kyler Murray was making me sweat that entire game because it kept seeming like he was like, I'm going to run for another 50 yards, throw a touchdown, get the ball back, do it again. And I was just like, someone please stop this man.
Yep, I completely agree. There's no way around it. He's an absolute superhero. He's my Superman. I pray to him every night. He will take me to the promised land. And
Kyler Murray or Tom Brady as your favorite quarterback?
Tom Brady has failed me, and I'm mad at him right now, but we'll get over it. Okay. So I'll stick with Tom Brady.
This week in the league is going to be very telling. I think we have 3 teams that are basically going to be in or out of playoffs with this win or loss for this week.
So Yahoo's current playoff projections is that I'm going to be the 1st seed, finishing 11-2 with a bye week. Chris is going to be the 2nd seed, finishing at 10-3 with a bye week. We've got John coming in at 8-5, Brian sneaking all the way up to 8-5. Aiden falling to 8-5. And then Thal just barely getting in the playoffs with a negative record at 6-7. And I'm going to bring up his points, 1,341, because Yahoo has Juan just missing playoffs, going 0-3 and falling to Thal by 45 points over the next 3 weeks.
Not to step on your feet right here, but there's actually been some corrections since the stats.
The correction is that Chris does not have a player in his lineup, and Juan is projected to beat Chris at this moment. But Chris, when he adds that player in the lineup, Juan will be projected to lose, and that's the reason.
I am currently in the playoff picture, and I would really like to be there.
So Yahoo thinks I'm going to win out. I will take that.
Yahoo also thinks I'll win out as well because I have very easy matchups out of me.
Yeah, I mean, if you live and die by Yahoo, you will lose fantasy. You cannot always just go by projections. There's a feel aspect to this game. It's not all analytics. But, I'm feeling pretty good regardless.
So some ifs, ands, or buts. Has anyone clinched yet? Honestly, I feel like I should have clinched, but I'm technically close because I was trying to do some math. I did some digging. So at worst, if I lose out and I go 8-5, but due to the 5 teams that are 5-5, there's no automatic clinch. And the problem is all those 5-5 teams also do play each other. So the only real scenario that I could possibly get bounced is if I go 0-3, and Brian would have to go 3-0 by beating Andrew.
Outscoring you by 50 as well.
Right. Or Andrew would have to go 3-0, beat Brian this week, and also beat me next week as well. So that's really the only 2 scenarios where I could somehow get bounced from 1st to 7th.
Hey, don't forget you could lose this week to me.
I could. That's the thing. I could go 0-3, and that would include getting a loss to Gatsy. Now here's a long shot. Messina's show me the money sitting at 3-7. If he wins out, it puts him at 6-7. And he would also need Gats, Andrew, and Thal to go 0-3, and Brian to also go 1-2 and have to outscore Brian by 30 points.
He's lost 5 straight.
Yes.
And he started Devonta Freeman last week.
I know.
I don't think he wants to win.
So it's saying if he actually changed his lineup, he could have a better chance at playoffs. And Derek's chance is very similar to Messina's, but Derek would have to outscore Brian by 145 over 3 weeks to be considered in.
Not likely.
No.
Yeah, not likely.
Derek needs to hope you get a couple goose eggs.
Yeah, no. Again, Andrew cannot start a full lineup this week, and he's going to have to pick up 3 guys off the waiver wire to play against me, and he's going to be projected around 93 to 94 points, and I don't know if I'm just crazy or not, but I don't think that's enough to win.
So leading into our mighty matchups, our game 1, I picked Andrew, who I don't know how to project because he can't start a full lineup right now. I do have some guys that I'd be willing to pick up. If I was you, Andrew, feel free to reach out if this episode gets out of time. Versus Brian, who's I'm projecting around 103. So as we said, Andrew can't currently start a full team due to injury and bye weeks. But Brian, how do you feel about the current health of Calvin Ridley and Kenny Golladay coming off injury? Because those are going to be huge factors for your team.
I think that Calvin Ridley actually will play this week. He's been limited in both practices, but he has been running on the sidelines with trainers. So tomorrow is really going to be a deciding factor if he practices in full pads and he's with the number 1 offense out there for all the rest of the week. Kenny Golladay still hasn't practiced yet. I don't have a lot of faith in him, but I do have a lot of faith in starting Christian Kirk against Seattle on Thursday Night Football. So even if Kenny Golladay does play, I might just sit him and start Kirk instead, just for the sole fact that Seattle Seahawks will have 30-plus points a game, and he'll probably catch a 60-yard touchdown.
See, I also did that last week with Robert Woods, and Robert Woods finished with 3.6 points, and it really hurt my soul.
Yes, that is true, but I have to put a risk here. If I want to go with Kenny Golladay and he's a game-time decision, then I'm going to end up starting Marquise Brown, who could potentially get me 2 points. So
right. The next mighty matchup is actually yours, John, versus Messina. So if Messina sets his lineup, I have Messina projected around 123 points actually versus John's projected about 121. I think the big questions are, will Ronald Jones get the full workload again? And for John, how do you feel about Tyler Boyd versus Washington, which has been under the radar, one of the best defenses versus wide receivers?
I think Tyler Boyd is the best guy, the best receiver on that team by far. just because AJ Green doesn't want to show up. He
Over T. Higgins?
Yeah. Oh, don't give me this T. Higgins bull crap.
He's going to tee off on you, Gets. Be careful.
Yeah, he might tee off. Yeah, it's no. He gets a ton of targets against Washington too. I mean, Cincinnati, they can win this game. Any game that Cincinnati can win, they're gonna throw the ball. Joe Burrow is starting to pick it up towards the end of the year. I think he's only gonna get better as the year goes on. So, in my opinion, Tyler Boyd is a must start every single week, unless you have some crazy team where you have top 15. All your receivers are top 15, 10 guys.
All right, Gatsy. We're going to talk about our matchup. So I've got you at the moment projected probably around 100 points. I'm projected around 118. I think the big factors are, for you, does the return of Russell Wilson return the first 6 game, putting up 35 points a game, Russell Wilson, does he come back and show up against Arizona? Also, does AJ Green decide to not lay an egg this week? And on my side, I'm hoping Aaron Jones does something versus the number 1 rushing defense in the NFL versus the running backs, which is Indianapolis at the moment. Also, does the Gibson train keep on chugging for this week?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Russell Wilson needs to be more of a deli counter guy where he's not cooking too much. He is cooking, but not that much. He can't be a full 5-star Michelin man because since the first 7 weeks of the year, he's had the same amount of yards as the last 4 weeks of the year, and he's made twice the amount of attempts. So he's clearly throwing way too much, not doing any type of production that he should be doing, and he's cooking far too much. I mean, also for me, I still have Giovanni Bernard in the lineup right now at 5.2 points, and I don't have a kicker, Robby Gould. So hopefully I get those situations taken care of on the fantasy or on the waiver wire.
I gave you the extra 6 points in my projection just because you haven't put a kicker in yet.
That's hurtful. That 6 points is. Yeah, we can discuss that.
Okay.
but in any case, yeah, I'm hoping to at least pick up some waiver wire guys and make this a competitive week and not just an absolute easy W for you.
My question for you, John, is how in the hell did you project 123 points for Nick Messina? Are they starting the 98, 95, or 85 Bears against me?
Well, I think if you put Patrick Mahomes in his lineup, that's like an extra 8 points. If he puts in Ronald Jones into DeAndre Swift, because he still has Freeman in his lineup, who had a 0. And then I think, doesn't he also not have a defense or kicker in right now?
My friend, he's projected for 106 points without a defense right now.
Did he switch around his running backs yet?
He needs a defense, so he'll probably be projected like 113.
Okay.
I was going to say, I do not think I'll ever lose to the likes of Nicholas Messina.
A 7-point swing, though, isn't much. I mean, Brian and I this past week, we were both projected in the 100 teens and ended up Brian had high 80s, I had high 60s.
It was a bad week for football. A lot of teams scored under 100 points this week.
And Cleveland again, or whoever Cleveland is playing again this week, they're projected the same terrible weather that they had this past week.
Also, for the most fun segment of the Mighty Matchups, that if Jake wins segment. I don't even put the projections
Do you
up.
have a noose?
So, if Jake wins, the all falls to 5 and 6 and stays in 9th place. And most likely probably doesn't make playoffs if this happens.
I mean, just for playoff implications, that's a huge matchup. Because if Jake, who just obviously could not care less about this league, decides to actually come out with a win, and Thal, who does care a lot, trying to completely sexually assault Jake this past week in trades, it would just be very detrimental for Matt Thal's ego.
I mean, who else lost to Mr. Jake Bishop?
I think just you and...
There's one other person, and I feel horribly for you as well because... Okay. Oh, it was just the Rumney brothers.
Yeah. Wow.
We've been cursed.
So is that who we should kick out of the league next year?
Messina should have lost to Jake, but then at the last second on that play, Jonnu Smith gets a touchdown. And then Jake still had like Lily half a point advantage, and then Gostowski kicks the field goal or point after attempt, causing Jake to lose by like 0.5. So Jake should have at least 3 wins.
Yeah. Yep.
I do love how that game comes down to Tom Brady versus Chris Godwin on Monday night, because if Tom Brady throws for 30 and AB and Mike Evans go off and Chris Godwin does nothing and Jake wins the game, that would be ecstatic.
Yeah.
It would just be another reason as to why DeAndre Hopkins is much better than both Robby Anderson and Chris Godwin.
Yep. That's established, my friend.
All right, so some final remarks. It's waiver wire day. Pick the guys up because it's the only way to get players now that the trade deadline has passed. And remind other players in your league to adjust their lineup unless you are playing them. I want to give a nice shout out again to Nick Messina for sitting DeAndre Swift and Ronald Jones against me. He left a difference of 41.9 points on his bench versus lineup, which would have won him the game and kept him in. But thanks again, Nick. I appreciate you.
You should send him an edible arrangement.
I should. And as always, like, subscribe, and share with your friends. We only want this podcast to grow and reach more people to hear about our bad beats, our complaints, and our small victories.
Don't forget to swipe up, too.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.